Hey y'all, Monk Joseph here with the Broken Buddha. I want to talk about a very serious but what will be probably a controversial topic here, real quick, and that's going to be schizophrenia and schizophrenic families. Um, I'll do my best with this video. It's not, I don't think these things are as known as they should be. I think most people in the general public watching this video will be really surprised. People with schizophrenic families will probably be a little more comforted. And yeah, so let's just crack right into it. So, schizophrenia is a psychotic condition. Psychotic meaning that your brain goes into a psychosis. Like if you look the wrong way at a stop sign in that really quick panic, it'd be like getting locked in that state for like 6 months or a year or your whole life. That's the psychosis side of schizophrenia. There's another side of schizophrenia that I call dreamer schizophrenia. And it's these people who believe that their lives are like perfect fairy tales and they will do anything, and I mean anything, to maintain that illusion that their lives are like this picture perfect story. Um, so that's what I know about the basic foundation, and a lot of it is, schizophrenia is somebody creating a reality because of their lack of connection to reality and inability to handle reality. Okay, so that's covered on what we're talking about. And also, the aggressive psychosis, when you see people like wandering around, like babbling to themselves or being aggressive to someone who's not there, or, talking to themselves in the dreamer fashion when you can tell they're not having a good life. Like they're stuck in it. So, and that's a lot of times what you're seeing. Most homeless people you see on the street, most drug addicts you see on the street are schizophrenics that are just, in the hell being treated like, you know, we're making it worse most of the time. Some of us try to help, but that's what you're really seeing. All right. Now, moving forward from that, the part that the general public I don't think understands is that there are a lot of schizophrenic families out there. And I can only talk about my experiences. If you need to try to invalidate my experiences, you can, but you weren't there, so you can't invalidate my experiences. When it comes to schizophrenic families, I've noticed every schizophrenic family picks one person to usually the person that ends up in the psychotic side of schizophrenia. They push that one person as far down as they can, while they all live in dream schizophrenia, and they go, "He's the only person in our family with schizophrenia." Let me explain to you why this is wrong. In Western medicine, they state that if that person has schizophrenia, so does everyone else in the family. You're just not actively psychotic, or you're stuck in your dreamer world. To see the rest of the family in a psychotic state, you'd have to somehow inadvertently push them out of the dreamer state, in which case they will get crazy and violent and aggressive in that psychosis. Um, or there's other things you can do. So I'll start talking about my experience now. I do come from a family with two functionally schizophrenic parents that have gone under the radar most of their lives. A lot of the stuff on the surface is there, and a lot of the things that twisted them, I think, are there too. That shows. Like a perfect example, some of the realities my mother believes in are fed to her by the other schizophrenics in her family. When I once tried to find out what reason I had to get abused constantly as a child for, what it ended up with was my grandmother telling me, my grandmother, my mom's mom, more or less telling me that it's okay if I got assaulted as a child a lot, as long as it was for my mother's need for sex. That it's okay if I got assaulted, as long as it was for sex, it's okay. And I'm not saying that everybody doesn't have rights to, their being a human being and all that stuff. Let me finish. So then when eventually I talked to my aunt about this, my mother's aunt, who we also call our aunt. And when I expressed this to her that like, hey, I think it's kind of concerning that everybody thinks it's okay that I got assaulted as a child because my mom needed sex. And she's like, yeah, and, and this is the point where I realized it's not entirely my mom's fault. It's actually no one's fault if you really want to get down to it. But my mother had her mom and aunt creating this false reality that it's okay if a stranger beats your children to a lower point of functionality as long as it's for sex. You know, I don't know where that came from. I don't know where they heard it from or where they got it from. But this is what my mother. These are the people who raised my mother, and I guess she can't break that reality. When it comes to my stepdad, it was very similar. He was fed a lot of stuff from a lot of not good people. His dad was a segregation era police officer. His best friend is now behind bars for being part of a pedophile ring, and his favorite uncle was also arrested for being a pedophile. So he has, I'm sure, plenty of non-realities that he thinks are realities, along with when you're stressed, you should just hurt somebody. I mean, he's been doing this his whole life, and I don't want to paint him as a bad person. This is his reality. You know, when my mom met him, he was 20 and she was 31. 2 years before that, he was assaulting neighborhood kids for fun because he knew nobody could touch him because his dad was a police officer. So there you have that as far as the false realities created by the generations before them. And I can't really dive into it more than that because these people won't be honest, right? So if I wanted to discuss this with my parents or their families, like they all, not they all, but they all have the one person who they need to believe is the only schizophrenic. And this is actually like a social philosophical conundrum if you really want to get down to it. You know, there's a saying in bar culture, you know, and this is pretty true to most towns around the entire world. Simple philosophical question: why is it that every bar needs two towns? Why is it that every town needs two bars? So the people at this bar can say they're not like the people at that bar. This is exactly similar to what I see in schizophrenic families. Why is it that they need that person to be schizophrenic? Just so they can be like, we're not like that. Um, so yeah, so now this is, and it makes it really, really tricky to when you're the person who the family says because he is in a psychosis, which I'm not in a psychosis at the time, but there were times in my life where they saw me in psychosis, and they'll be like, well, because he's in psychosis, he's the sick one. But then you have these deluded, sick people that if you look at them on the surface, you know they're deluded, sick people. But I don't know if it's that they can't handle that reality, so they just create this reality. Um, yeah. Anyway, so that's what it is. You know, I've explained what the condition is. I may have gotten carried away with analogies. Anybody that is part of one of those schizophrenic families will use that misanalogizing or the neurotic tone of the analogizing to go, see, yep, he's that thing that I'm not. Like, no, I'm not. I'm not in a psychotic state. I'm trying to explain an impossible, something that Western medicine doesn't and can't understand. I'm trying to explain to you. And I'm not saying I know better than Western medicine. I'm saying I see the problem. You have not only do you have doctors working with outdated material, but at the same time you have a condition where anybody who assaults somebody or kills somebody can go, oh wait, no, I have that. Yeah, I couldn't control myself. Yeah. So you have like people lying about it, doctors that don't know, and a lot of do-gooder doctors that can't help, but think that they are. Yeah, and even the doctors themselves. I remember the last therapist I had was not an actual doctor. I watched him get stressed out, lightly stressed out, and the guy went into like a complete psychosis and could not function at all. Just over a stern conversation, no loud tones, no yelling, no name calling, nothing. Same thing with my current doctor. She comes from one of those schizophrenic families that only has one schizophrenic in it. I'm going to tell all of you the same thing. If you think you have one schizophrenic in your family, you are also schizophrenic and are in obviously the dreamer state of schizophrenia. Because you need to believe this reality that isn't true, that can easily be disproven by this video or anybody else part of one of these families. So that's everything I'm willing to cover. I will cover why I make this video. It makes me sick to my stomach because I'm the one that a schizophrenic family tried to push down and keep under their thumb that survived. Most of us, I look around, kill themselves or become junkies. I'm tired of seeing all these families get this way, right? So do me a favor, right? For all my hundreds of hours of living in hell and suffering over this, the next time you see a family that says they have one schizophrenic family member, look them in their eye and say, bullcrap, you're schizophrenic too, and that's why you're acting like this. So yeah, and again, I'm not saying that you need to like project or mislabel something. This is basic medicine, psych medicine 101 stuff, right? If that person's schizophrenic in the family, so is everyone else. My mom is schizophrenic. That means my brothers are capable of it. If they get their psychosis triggered or they get pulled into dreamer lifestyle too much, and it means I'm capable of it. And I haven't really had a chance to talk to too much of my dad's side because I got pulled out of that. I won't even that, to say that lightly, my mother encouraged my father to continue his addictions and then left him when his addictions got out of control. That's the schizophrenic nonsense I'm talking about. But now she goes around telling people she's like a savior. She doesn't tell people that she told him to keep doing hard drugs and keep up with the infidelity. She put guidelines on it. But she literally told an addict, keep fueling your addiction, just control it. And then when he lost control, bye, you're a horrible person. And this is, this was me at 6 months of my life is when that happened. So, and then she goes back to Baltimore, trying to get everyone, pity me, pity me. Like, you just took your kids 300 miles to get someone else to rescue you. It didn't work out. And now you're coming back telling everyone to pity you. Like, you enjoyed hurting your first husband, terribly. Like, I mean, you did everything you could to destroy the man, and it didn't work out. And now, because you wanted everyone to fix your problems and they didn't, it's now everyone else's fault. And, to this day, my mother will blame anyone for the handful of things that went wrong in her life because there really weren't a lot. I mean, she really was a safe child. She got to enjoy safety. And then, as far as I can tell, somewhere as an adult, she smoked PCP and shot heroin, two things that will put you in a permanent psychosis for life. I don't know if she ever smoked crack. I know my dad did, and I know that they did all these things together, so I could assume, but I don't know. But I do know for a fact that she smoked PCP and shot heroin. And again, when it comes to schizophrenia, that's one of those things that can trigger schizophrenia like for life. And I grew up in Baltimore, right? In case you don't know, Baltimore, Maryland is the heroin capital of the country. And one thing I learned growing up in the heroin capital of the country is that when somebody injects heroin, I mean, I'll tell you a story. I forgot the guy's name, but I knew this guy once. Snorted heroin, party, did all this stuff. Didn't have any problem with it. He really wasn't like hooked, linked, nothing. Like he was just, to him, it was just partying. And that's how a lot of things in Baltimore end up. A lot of people experiment with opiates. Not everybody gets hooked. But I remember the minute he shot up, right? Not the minute, like the day after, because I was at my friend's house and he had showed up, and we both looked at him and were like, "What the hell happened to you?" The other guy was like, "You shot up, didn't you?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, I don't know why," but like you could see that he was not the same person the day before that he was the day after, and I mean psychologically, physically, physiologically. I mean, I knew that dude for I think a year at that time, and all of a sudden he's not that dude anymore. Like he's a completely different human. So I mean, and that also is one of it can be chemical, it can be situational. I'm sure my mother's schizophrenia was triggered when her father almost left the family. It was probably triggered when she ended up in a supposedly abusive situation with her first husband. But with a schizophrenic, you don't know. She painted out my brother's dad to be some kind of monster. And in my memory, the guy is like the sweetest human I ever met. Never hit me, was never mean to me. He actually used to look at me with like pitiful eyes a lot, because he could see the situation I was in. And now it resonates, but back then it didn't. Um, so there you have it. Again, I'm sure this doesn't come out great. One of the biggest strengths of a schizophrenic abuser is making sure that their victim is left non-functional and seemingly neurotic enough that nobody will ever believe them. And anybody who has experienced schizophrenic abuse or schizophrenics understands this. So just to be clear, I am stating that I know that in Western medical theory, I have a double schizophrenic seed, which means I have a 40% chance at any given time to go into a psychosis. The only benefit I have is I've had a grown man pushing me into this psychosis since I was like 4 and 5 years old. So I have a little bit, and I was able to kind of step back and see things, separate my selfishness out of it, and try to see things from the outside. And yeah, and here we are. But now I'm in a position where I have two sick parents, neither of which can be helped. I just have to sit here and watch this ride out until whatever happens. Um, my siblings are not much different. I had one of my brothers stop talking to me because I simply said, "I don't believe you." That's all I said. He was an ex-sergeant in the Army, always talked all this mental health is for losers, I'm a tough guy nonsense. And all I did was say, I don't believe you. And he cried mental health, hung up on me, and we haven't talked since. That is the face of schizophrenia, people. And this is what I'm saying you guys need to be aware of. Like, that's not normal. It's not normal for two brothers to go, hey, man, I don't believe you. And for you to be like, you're a stupid piece of crap, stop abusing me, and never talk to me again. Um, and then my other brother married a schizophrenic like his mother. Uh, so my other brother, I was visiting on a long-term visit. I was going to try to rebuild in his area. Threw me out because this is a very short story, but I have to articulate this perfectly. His wife was taking me to the doctor. She made a joke. I couldn't laugh because I was trying not to pass out from whatever I was dealing with that morning. And I knew she'd be offended if I didn't laugh. So I said, please don't make jokes. I'm trying not to pass out right now. I said it calmly because I was scared to pass out. But then fast forward a few months, I went to China. I trained for a while. I came back. I get in my brother's car between the airport, and what I didn't know what was going to be a motel, I get told you can't be at my house anymore. Um, and I asked why, and he said it was because I asked his wife not to make jokes because I was trying to pass out. So I have a brother who literally put me on the street homeless because I didn't want to offend his wife and I asked her not to make jokes. And to them, like, he needs this to be a good enough reason to kick me out. And yeah, guys, that's schizophrenia. I'm sorry, but if somebody simply makes a simple request, hey, and also I will tell you why she really threw me out, because I do know. I was complaining about my life one day and she started crying, borderline hysterically, started talking about things that didn't make any sense, and then afterwards started yelling at me for making her cry. She said I made her cry, right? By telling my life story, I forced her to cry. And she was going on and on, like, I haven't cried in 9 years, like, you made me do this. I called my brother immediately and said, dude, I don't know what's going on here. I was talking about my life. She freaked out, started crying, started yelling at me for making her cry. And I told him this in real time. The dentist thing happened, like, I think a week or two before that, and we didn't have any issue, no complaints, no problems. But after that moment, when she cried for the first time in 9 years, it triggered her schizophrenia, and she lost her freaking mind. And I got thrown out of my brother's house for it. I didn't say anything mean. I didn't do anything aggressive. I just told my life story and asked someone not to make a joke one time. Two things that I was told was enough for me to be homeless. And when they tell this story, I'm sure that they forget the part. They probably just talk about, like, oh, he was homeless, this and that. So, you know, that is that, like, they need to lock into that dreamer lifestyle. Um, yeah. So that's it. It's just again, I know it's a long-winded video. I don't usually do videos this long, but it's a very important topic, guys. Like, people are suffering. Like, look around you. Those homeless people, some of them aren't on drugs and they're in hell because their family needs them to be in hell so they can be happy for 5 minutes because they don't know how to make their unhappiness or whatever it is. I don't know. Yeah, yeah. So this is it's very heavy stuff. I've been able to deal with it. I've met a lot of people who have not been so fortunate in dealing with it. Most people seem to corner their minds into, like, the social norms of the era and just kind of tell themselves, and as long as they stay in that little social norm corner, they seem to be okay. But if you try to pull them out to, like, read or exercise or learn or do anything, talking about it's okay. But when you